The small town was abuzz with whispers. Aisha, an 18-year-old girl, had just married Henry, a 75-year-old man with graying hair and a wealth of stories behind his kind, but weathered eyes. Their wedding had been small, quiet, held in a local church with only a handful of people. It was a surprise to everyone, especially because Aisha came from humble beginnings, and Henry, despite his age, was a wealthy businessman, respected in the community. Aisha's decision to marry Henry was a shock to many, and the question started immediately. Why had she chosen someone so much older? Was it love? Was it his money? Or perhaps a combination of both? Despite the speculation, Aisha had always been kind and gentle, and when Henry proposed, she saw him as more than an old man. She saw someone who could offer her security, a future, and perhaps even love. They had met at a local coffee shop when Henry asked her about a book she was reading. Their friendship blossomed quickly, and soon after it turned into a romantic relationship. Henry, who had lost his wife years ago, had found someone who brought life back to his world. And Aisha, though young, was tired of the uncertainty of her life. She longed for stability. But as they settled into their new life together, Aisha began to feel something was off. At first it was small things, odd requests from Henry, small trinkets that seemed out of place in the house, and strange phone calls late at night. But when the newlyweds returned from their honeymoon, something felt different. The energy between them seemed to shift. Aisha's curiosity began to grow. She couldn't shake the feeling that there were secrets hidden in the corners of Henry's life. Small clues began to unravel as she noticed old photographs of Henry with people she didn't recognize, a stack of letters hidden away in a drawer that he never seemed to mention, and an old dusty safe that he locked and unlocked with a key that never seemed to leave his side. She tried to ignore it at first, brushing off her doubts. She had married Henry out of love, or at least she thought she had. But her gut told her there was more to his past than he let on. Then one afternoon, as Henry napped in his favorite chair, Aisha's eyes fell on a lockbox sitting on the shelf. It wasn't the safe. It was something different, smaller and more discreet. It was tucked away behind old books, almost as though it was waiting for her. Aisha's heart raced with anticipation as she approached the box. She hesitated. What if this was something that would change everything? She had already seen the signs, the phone calls, the secretive glances. But what would she find if she opened it? Would it be more than she could handle? In that moment, she decided she had to know. The lid creaked open, and inside she found a stack of old photographs, some of them faded, others in pristine condition. They were pictures of Henry, but he wasn't alone. There were women, young women with smiles that seemed almost too perfect, their eyes bright and full of life. But it wasn't the women that struck her the most. It was the letters. The letters were handwritten, dated decades ago with the same beautiful handwriting. Each one seemed to address a person named Margaret. As she read through the letters, her fingers trembling, she began to piece together something she wasn't ready for. It wasn't just a relationship. These letters detailed a deep love, one that had lasted years, and according to the letters, Margaret wasn't just someone from Henry's past. She had been his wife, the woman who came before her. Isha's stomach twisted. She wasn't just married to a man with a past. She had married a man whose history was full of secrets. This wasn't just about love. It was about a legacy that Henry had hidden from her. As she sifted through the papers, one letter in particular caught her eye. It was sealed with a red wax emblem, unlike the others. Her heart skipped a beat as she carefully broke the seal. The letter inside was much shorter, but it was dated only 9 days before their wedding. Aisha felt the color drain from her face as she read the final lines. I can't keep running from it. You'll know soon enough, but be careful. Everything has its price. Aisha sat motionless, the letter still clutched tightly in her hand. Her mind raced, struggling to make sense of the cryptic words she had just read. What did Henry mean by everything has its price? What was this secret, and why had he hidden it so carefully? Her breath came in shallow bursts as the implications of the letter began to sink in. The timing of it all was too much to ignore. 9 days before their wedding, Henry had known something, or had been involved in something, that made him feel the need to warn her. Aisha's hands trembled as she placed the letter back in the box and closed the lid. Her thoughts swirled in a haze of confusion and fear. She couldn't just ignore this. If she wanted to understand what was happening, she needed answers. Henry had always been kind, treating her with patience and respect. But now everything about their relationship seemed tainted by the shadow of this hidden truth. The silence in the room was deafening as Aisha stood up, pacing back and forth. What could she do? She wanted to confront Henry, but she wasn't sure if she could handle whatever secret lay buried in his past. What was it about Margaret? Why hadn't he told her about her? Why had he kept all of this a secret? As the clock ticked away, Aisha's mind grew more tangled. But one thought kept repeating itself. She had to know. She couldn't live her life in uncertainty, haunted by questions she couldn't answer. Henry had kept this from her for too long, but now she had to make a decision. Would she confront him, or would she allow the mystery to fester and ruin everything they had built together? She grabbed her phone, her fingers shaking as she typed out a quick message to a close friend. She needed someone to talk to, someone who could help her figure out what to do next. Her friend Jenna had always been there for her, and Aisha knew she needed guidance before she made any decisions. Within minutes, her phone buzzed with a response. Jenna, what's going on? You sound upset. Aisha quickly typed back, trying to keep her emotions in check. Aisha, I found something. A letter from Henry's past. Something he never told me. I don't know what to think. The response came quickly. Jenna, what do you mean? What did the letter say? Aisha hesitated before replying. Could she really share the details of the letter with her friend? Could Jenna understand the weight of what she had just uncovered? The truth was too heavy to carry alone. But would telling someone else make it feel more real? It was too soon, too raw. Aisha typed. Aisha, it's about a woman named Margaret. Henry was married to her before, and now, I think there's something else. Something he hasn't told me. A few seconds passed before Jenna's response popped up on the screen. Jenna, that's a lot. But you need to talk to him, Aisha. Whatever's going on, you deserve to know the truth. Don't let this sit in the dark. Aisha stared at the message, feeling both comforted and overwhelmed by the advice. Talk to him? What if the truth was worse than she imagined? What if it broke her heart? But she knew Jenna was right. She couldn't keep living in this fog of doubt. The decision weighed heavily on her. She had to confront Henry, no matter how painful the truth might be. She needed to know what she had married into, and she couldn't let the darkness of his secrets consume her life. Aisha took a deep breath, steadied herself, and walked toward the living room, where Henry was sitting, quietly reading a book. His head turned as she entered, his face lighting up with a warm smile, but Aisha couldn't smile back. The weight of the letter and the unanswered questions filled her chest with a heaviness she could no longer ignore. Henry, Aisha's voice was steady but low, her gaze not meeting his. We need to talk. He set the book down, his expression softening. What's wrong, Aisha? For a moment she hesitated, unsure how to start, unsure whether she should reveal the letter. But the words came, forced out by the urgency inside her. I found a letter. It's from someone named Margaret. I need to know who she is. Why haven't you told me about her? Her voice shook with the final words. It wasn't just the question. It was everything that had built up inside her since she'd read the letter. Henry's face immediately tightened, his expression darkening. For a moment the room felt cold. His lips parted, but no sound came out. He looked at her, his eyes flickering with what seemed like guilt. Deep regret. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Henry spoke, his voice low. Aisha, there are things in my past that I haven't shared with you. Things I thought you didn't need to know. Aisha's heart skipped a beat. She had been right. He wasn't the man she thought he was, and now the truth was about to be revealed. Henry sighed deeply, his shoulders slumping with the weight of his secrets. Aisha's heart raced as she waited for him to speak, the silence between them growing heavier with each passing second. She had prepared herself for this moment, but the reality of confronting him was far harder than she had anticipated. The truth she was about to hear could shatter everything. I never wanted to tell you about Margaret, Henry finally said, his voice rough with emotion. But I can see now that I can't hide it from you anymore. Aisha stood frozen, her stomach twisting into knots. Margaret, the name she had seen in the letter, wasn't just a name from the past. She was part of Henry's present, part of a life he hadn't shared with her. Aisha struggled to stay composed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who was she to you?" she asked, her breath catching in her throat. Henry's eyes darkened, and he looked away for a moment, as though searching for the right words, as though he had to dig deep to find the strength to speak the truth. When he finally met her gaze again, there was pain in his eyes and unspoken guilt that made Aisha's heart ache. "She was my wife," he said slowly, the words heavy. "We were married for 30 years. I loved her deeply, Aisha. But she wasn't who I thought she was." Aisha's mind reeled. "What do you mean? What wasn't she?" Henry took a deep breath, his eyes distant as he relived a past that had been buried for far too long. "Margaret, she had secrets, things I never knew about her until it was too late. After she died, I found out things that changed everything. Things I'm still trying to understand, but there's one thing I couldn't leave behind: her legacy." Aisha's pulse quickened. "What legacy?" Henry stood, walking to the window and staring out, as if he couldn't bear to look at her anymore. "There's something I didn't want you to know, something tied to Margaret's death. Aisha, you've heard of the family estate, haven't you?" Aisha nodded, still uncertain where this conversation was leading. "Yes, you've mentioned it before, but I thought it was just a part of your business." "It's not just business," Henry said softly, turning back toward her, his face pale. "It's tied to the darkest part of my past. Margaret's death wasn't accidental, Aisha. It was part of something much bigger, something we've both become a part of now." Aisha's breath caught in her chest. "What are you saying, Henry? What does all of this have to do with me?" Henry's gaze softened, but there was no denying the weight in his words. "I kept you in the dark because I didn't want to drag you into this mess. But now I realize that I can't keep it from you any longer. The estate isn't just property. It's a place that holds something dangerous." Aisha's mind struggled to keep up with the barrage of revelations. "Dangerous? What are you talking about? What did Margaret leave behind?" Henry paused, the room seemingly growing colder with every passing moment. "I didn't know everything about her. After her death, I found a letter hidden in her things. She had written it before she passed. A letter to me." Aisha's heart skipped a beat. "What did it say?" Henry closed his eyes, his voice growing shaky as he spoke. "She warned me. She told me that she had made a deal with people who had promised her things no one should ever want. When she died, she left me with the consequences of that deal. And now, Aisha, now it's our turn." Aisha's breath caught in her throat. She took a step back, her mind swirling. A deal? A dark pact from the past that had now come to claim them both? It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. But the fear in Henry's eyes was real. He wasn't lying. He was terrified. "You married me, Aisha, and by doing that, you've inherited the curse that's been passed down." Henry's voice broke, and the gravity of his words hit her like a tidal wave. "The estate is the key, and now that we're married, we're tied to it." Aisha felt her legs give way, and she sank down onto the couch, her mind struggling to catch up. This wasn't the life she had imagined. She had come to this town for peace, for a fresh start, but now it seemed like she had stumbled into a dark legacy, one she couldn't escape from, no matter how much she wanted to. Henry stepped forward, kneeling in front of her. His hands shook as he took hers in his. "Aisha, please. I'm so sorry. I never wanted this for you. But now we have to face it, together. There's no running away from it. The truth is out, and we have to deal with it." Aisha looked at the key she had found, still clenched tightly in her hand. Everything had changed in an instant. The man she had married, the life she had hoped for, all seemed like a faded dream now, replaced by something far more sinister. She looked into Henry's eyes, and for the first time, she saw something she hadn't seen before. Not just guilt, but fear. Fear of what was coming next. Her voice barely a whisper, she asked, "What happens now?" Henry paused for a long moment, his face etched with anguish. "We have no choice now, Aisha. We have to face it, or it will destroy us. Aisha's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the room closing in around her, the walls narrowing, the air thick with the weight of Henry's words. A curse, a deal made by his late wife, Margaret, one that now threatened to consume both of them. She had never imagined that her marriage would lead her into something so dark, so unnatural. But as Henry spoke, the reality of their situation began to take shape in her mind. She looked down at the key in her hand, its edges rough, the strange symbols on it still glowing faintly. It felt heavy now, heavier than it ever had before. This wasn't just some object she had found in a dusty drawer. This was a key to something much worse, something ancient and terrifying. "What kind of deal?" she asked, her voice trembling as she forced herself to focus on Henry. "What did Margaret get involved in?" Henry shifted uncomfortably, his gaze shifting to the floor. "I never wanted to get involved, Aisha. I tried to walk away, but it was too late. When Margaret became ill, I started looking into her past. I had to know what happened to her, why she had become so obsessed with the estate. And then I found the truth." Aisha leaned forward, unable to control her curiosity. "What truth, Henry? What did you find?" Henry swallowed hard, his hands shaking as he wiped his brow. "She made a pact with a group of people. Cultists, really. They promised her immortality. They said they could help her escape death. They were involved in things that no one should be. Dark rituals, sacrifices. They needed a bloodline to continue their work." Aisha's stomach twisted in disgust. "And what does this have to do with us?" Henry's face was drawn tight with tension, his voice barely above a whisper. "Everything. We are part of that bloodline, Aisha. You and I, we were bound together the moment we married. Our marriage sealed the curse. The deal is still in place. The estate, it's the source of their power, and now the power has transferred to us." Aisha couldn't believe what she was hearing. She had married Henry for his stability, for a future she thought she could build together with him. But now everything was unraveling. Her mind raced, trying to piece together the dark web of secrets, but it was impossible. A cult, immortality, bloodlines, and a curse. It was too much. "How do we stop this?" Aisha demanded, her voice rising with desperation. "You're telling me that we're cursed because we're married? That we've somehow inherited this nightmare?" Henry looked at her with deep sorrow in his eyes, as though he had already accepted the truth. "I wish I knew, Aisha. I really do. Margaret thought she could outsmart them, thought she could break the curse, but she couldn't. And now it's our turn to face what she started." Aisha shook her head in disbelief. "So what now? We just sit here and wait for this curse to claim us too?" Henry's face grew dark, his eyes distant. "I've tried to escape it, Aisha. I thought if I kept it hidden from you, you wouldn't have to face it. But the truth is, the curse is growing stronger. It's not something we can run from anymore." Suddenly, the air in the room seemed to grow heavier. Aisha looked around, her senses on high alert. There was a strange electric hum in the air now, a low vibration that seemed to seep from the walls. The room felt alive, like it was pulsing with an energy that hadn't been there before. Aisha stood up, unable to sit still any longer. "We need to go to the estate," she said, determination growing in her chest. "I need to see it for myself. Maybe there's something there, something that can help us break this curse." Henry shook his head vehemently. "No, Aisha, that's exactly what they want. The estate is the source of their power. It's where the rituals were done. If you step foot on that land, you'll invite the darkness to follow you. You can't go there. You don't understand what it will do to you." Aisha met Henry's gaze, her eyes fierce. "I don't care what you say, Henry. I need answers. We can't keep living in fear. I'm not just going to sit here and wait for this curse to consume us. I'm going to find a way to end it. And I'm not doing it alone." Henry looked at her, his face filled with conflicted emotions. Love, fear, regret. But there was no denying the resolve in her eyes. He knew he couldn't stop her. She was determined. But deep inside, he knew the truth of what she was about to face. The estate wasn't just a place. It was a trap. And once they entered, there would be no going back. The curse would be waiting for them. And the dark power that had haunted Margaret's life would soon be coming for both of them. "I'll go with you," he said, his voice barely audible. "But you need to know, it might be too late to stop it. The estate, it's not just a house, Aisha. It's a prison. And we've just opened the door. The drive to the estate was long and silent. Aisha's mind raced as she stared out the window, watching the world blur past. She could feel Henry beside her, his presence both comforting and unsettling. The weight of what lay ahead hung heavily in the air, making the miles stretch endlessly before them. Neither of them spoke. Words felt too small to address what was coming, what they were about to face. As they approached the estate, Aisha could feel a subtle shift in the air, a change in the atmosphere that sent shivers down her spine. The sprawling mansion loomed in the distance, its silhouette dark against the dull sky, shrouded in mist. It had always looked like a grand, stately home in the stories Henry had told her, but now it looked more like a forgotten monument to something darker, something hidden for far too long. When they arrived, Henry hesitated before opening the door. His hand lingered on the handle as if unsure whether to step out. Aisha looked at him, but his eyes were distant, filled with fear and regret. He knew this place all too well. Aisha stepped out of the car first, the cold air biting at her skin. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing thoughts, trying to shake off the fear creeping into her bones. But it was impossible. The estate felt like it was alive, like it was watching them, waiting for them to make their move. The front door of the mansion creaked open as they approached, its hinges stiff with age. No one had lived here for years, yet it still felt as though the house had been waiting for their return. Aisha, are you sure about this? Henry asked, his voice barely a whisper, filled with concern. I have to know, Henry. We have to face this together, Aisha replied, her voice steady. But deep inside, she felt the pull of something dark, something that wanted to consume them both. The moment they stepped inside, the temperature dropped. The air felt heavier, the walls seeming to close in on them. The mansion was alive, but not in the way it should be. There was no warmth here, no welcoming presence, just a suffocating ancient force that seemed to linger in every room, in every corner. Aisha could feel the weight of the house pressing down on her as they moved deeper into the mansion. Every step they took seemed to echo, reverberating off the walls like a reminder that they were intruders in a place that had been sealed away for far too long. They reached the grand staircase, its ornate railing twisted and warped with age. As they ascended, the air grew thicker, the whispers growing louder. Aisha couldn't understand what they were saying, but the words felt like a warning, an urgent plea for them to turn back. But they couldn't. Henry's grip on her hand tightened as they reached the top of the stairs. A cold gust of wind blew through the hallway, making the lights flicker and the shadows dance unnaturally. A door at the end of the hall stood ajar, and Aisha could feel its pull, like it was calling to her. This is it, Henry said, his voice shaking. This is where it all began. The rituals, the curse, it all started in this room. Aisha nodded, her breath catching in her throat. She could feel it now, too. The presence in the room, heavy and oppressive. Whatever had been done here, it had left its mark. It had left something unfinished, and they were about to find out just how deep the darkness ran. They stepped into the room and the door slammed shut behind them, plunging them into complete darkness. Aisha could barely see her hand in front of her face, but she could feel the air shift, like something was moving just beyond her sight. Suddenly, the room lit up, the flickering light coming from an ancient candelabra in the center of the room. The flames danced violently, casting twisted shadows on the walls. But the strangest thing of all was what lay on the floor. A circle drawn in what appeared to be dark ink was etched into the floor, surrounding a black stone in the center. The stone glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. The key in Aisha's hand began to vibrate, growing warmer, as though it was reacting to the stone. This is it, Henry whispered, his voice trembling. The heart of the curse, the reason Margaret could never escape, and the reason I couldn't either. Aisha's heart raced as she stepped closer to the stone. What do we do now? She asked, her voice barely audible. Henry looked at her, his eyes filled with sadness. We have to destroy it, Aisha. We have to destroy the stone to break the curse. But as Henry moved to step forward, something shifted in the room. The shadows twisted and writhed like living creatures, and the temperature dropped even further. The whispers grew louder, now audible in her ears, hissing words that made Aisha's blood run cold. "You can't break the curse." The voice came from nowhere, but it felt like it was coming from inside her. The shadows closed in, the darkness swallowing the room, as the stone in the center of the circle pulsed stronger than ever. Then, as if it had been waiting for this moment, the shadows suddenly collapsed on them. In that instant, Aisha felt the stone's power surge through her, the darkness engulfing her body. She felt her mind fracture, felt herself slipping into something otherworldly. But as the shadows tried to claim her, she remembered the key. With trembling hands, she held it up and pressed it into the stone. For a moment, there was nothing. No sound, no movement. Just silence. And then, the light exploded. The shadows shattered like glass, the darkness lifting in an instant, leaving only the faint glow of the key in Aisha's hand. The stone, once glowing with power, lay still and lifeless. The curse was broken. But as Aisha looked around, she realized something was missing. Henry was no longer beside her. The house was still, eerily quiet. The price of breaking the curse had been paid, but at what cost?
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.